You are Valak, the Marquis of Snakes. That is a line from a film. Valak is not a marquis. Here is the whole of it, spoken by Lorraine Warren over a candle in The Conjuring 2. Your name gives me dominion over you, demon, and I do know your name. You are Valak, the defiler, the profane, the Marquis of Snakes. 4 claims in it. 3 appear nowhere in any book this name comes from. A president, not a marquis. A small boy with wings, not a nun. A finder of buried money, not a defiler. Tonight, the Heretic Codex is open on the real demon behind The Conjuring. Because what the record has is 1 paragraph. 1. Copied by hand, then printed, then copied again, by men who never met each other, across 4.5 centuries and 3 languages. In all that copying, not one of them changed the description. They changed the number. 13, then 20, then 26, then 30, then 38. His army got bigger every time somebody touched the page, and nobody ever explained why. Hold on to the 13 and the 38. None of this asks you to believe in him. The question tonight is not whether a spirit with that name is out there, it is what a room full of dead copyists actually wrote down, and how far the film ended up from it, and both of those are on paper. Start with the film, because the film is the reason you know the name at all. The Conjuring 2 came out in 2016, directed by James Wan, and it put a nun in a corridor. She worked well enough to get her own film 2 years later, and The Nun took more money than anything else in that series, and then there was a sequel to that. A demon who had existed as one obscure paragraph became, in about 7 years, one of the most recognizable horror figures alive. Now the awkward part, because The Conjuring 2 is set inside a real case. Enfield, North London, August 1977. A council house on Green Street. A mother named Peggy Hodgson, 4 children, and knocking in the walls that did not stop for 18 months. It became the most reported haunting in British history. 2 investigators from the Society for Psychical Research, Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair, effectively moved in. Between them they left hundreds of hours of tape and one of the fullest written records any case of this kind has produced. The name Valak is not anywhere on it. If you want the horror film demons taken back to the books they were lifted out of, make sure to subscribe to the Heretic Codex. Now, the voice on those tapes, because it gave a name of its own. The thing in that house did not claim to be a demon. It spoke in a low man's voice that came out of an 11-year-old girl named Janet. What it claimed was that it had once been a man. It said it went blind, then it had a hemorrhage, and then it fell asleep and died in the chair in the corner downstairs. The name it gave was Bill Wilkins. That is the level the case actually runs at. Knocking that answered questions. Furniture that moved when the room was full of people and when it was not. Marbles thrown down a corridor. A girl who spoke for hours in a voice that was not hers, on tape, in front of witnesses, and who was also caught bending spoons for the cameras when the real thing was not obliging. The investigators wrote all of that down, including the cheating, which is why the record survived being argued about for 50 years. There is no nun in the Enfield material. There is no Latin, no habit, no painting, no demon with a rank. There is a chair in the corner of a council house and a dead man's voice complaining about it. The Warrens themselves are barely in it. One of the 2 investigators who lived with the case wrote afterwards that they turned up uninvited, stayed a short while, and left. The films made them the center of it. Every dramatization takes that license. It is worth saying out loud anyway, because the film is not evidence about the case. So the demon in that film is not a demon from the case. She is a demon lifted out of a grimoire and dropped into it. Because a poltergeist that says it used to be a retired old man is not something you can put on a poster. And the films gave her a history to go with the face. In The Nun, she is an ancient thing let loose under an abbey in Romania by a medieval duke, sealed away with the blood of Christ, and woken again in 1952. It is a good origin story. It is also entirely new. There is no origin story for this spirit anywhere in the written record, and that absence is not an oversight. The Ars Goetia gives no backstory to any of its 72, not one. No fall, no rebellion, no war in heaven, no date of expulsion. It tells you what a spirit looks like, what rank he holds, what he will do for you, and how many he commands, and then it moves to the next entry. These are not characters. They are personnel files. Everything anybody now feels about these names, the tragedy and the menace and the fallen glory, was added afterwards by people who wanted a story, and the films are simply the most recent to do it. So, back 5.5 centuries, to the first time anybody wrote this name down. Long before a nun stepped out of a painting, Valak was a small boy on a two-headed dragon, and the only thing anybody wanted from him was money. Before the names, the shape of the thing, because every one of these books is laid out the same way, and the differences only stand out once you know the fields. A spirit catalogue fills in 5 things per entry, in the same order every time: a rank, an appearance, an office, which is what he does for you, a number of legions, and a seal, a drawn mark, which is the only thing these books say gives a man any purchase on him at all. Rank, appearance, office, legions, seal. Keep those 5 in your ear, because 4 of them are about to change on this spirit, and one of them never does, and which one holds still is the whole story. Now the oldest ground. There is a French list from the 15th century called the Book of Spirits. Around 46 entries, each one filling in those fields. It is among the earliest catalogues of its kind in Europe, and it reads like a staff list for an institution nobody will name. Several of the names in it are names the Ars Goetia will still be using 200 years later. He is not in it, not under any of the 8 spellings his name will later collect. He turns up in the next book along, the Book of the Office of Spirits, also 15th century, related to the French list and much bigger, 82 entries instead of 46. Somewhere between those 2 lists, somebody added him. Nobody knows who, and nobody knows from where. Hold that title. A century later, when the first printed catalogue of these spirits appears, its compiler states in print that he worked from a book of that name. When Valac arrives, he arrives twice. Not as 1 entry, as 2, under 2 different names, at 2 different numbers on the list, presented as 2 separate spirits. The first is Coolor, the second is Doulus. Their descriptions are almost the same sentence. Here is Coolor, in the book's own English, a great prince. He appeareth like a child, and hath with him wings like to a goshawk, and he rideth upon a dragon that hath 2 heads, and giveth true answers for hid treasures. Read that slowly, because it is the entire character, and it never changes again. A child, bird wings, a dragon with 2 heads, and he tells you where money is buried. Doulus gets more clauses, and every one of them is about that same creature, a great prince, appearing like a child, wings like an angel this time, rather than a hawk, up on the back of a dragon with 2 heads, giving true answers of hidden treasure. Then the extra clauses. He keeps all treasure in places where serpents are seen. He appoints which spirits guard which hoard. He gives a man household spirits, and the book says flatly that without him nobody can do it, and he has 20 legions under him. 2 entries, 1 creature. Modern editors mark them as a duplicate and move on, and that is probably right. Probably is doing a lot of work in that sentence. These books were assembled, not written. A compiler with 3 manuscripts in front of him, and no way to check them against each other, copies what he has got. If 2 of his sources described the same spirit under 2 garbled versions of one name, he would have no way of knowing, and both would go in. Alternatively, a draft entry and a revised entry both ended up in the same fair copy. Alternatively, and nobody can rule this out either, the 15th century genuinely believed there were two of them who looked identical and did the same job. Nothing in the manuscripts settles it. What can be said is that from here on there is only one of him, and he is about to lose both names and get a third. Before that, the obvious question: why is a spirit whose only skill is finding buried money worth keeping at all? Because that is what these books were for. Treasure hunting was a real trade in late medieval Europe, and it was a prosecuted one. Court records across the continent are full of men, very often clergymen, caught digging for hoards with a book and a circle and a set of names. It was not a metaphor, and it was not devil worship. Somebody had heard there was Roman silver under a field. The going method for finding it involved a spirit who knew where it was, and a written guarantee that he would not hurt you on the way. Read the catalogues with that in mind, and they change shape. There are dozens of treasure spirits in them. There are hardly any that do nothing but harm. The audience for these manuscripts was not a coven. It was people who wanted something specific and expensive, and the books are best understood as a trade directory for getting it. And once treasure is the point, the snakes stop being decoration. Across European folklore, from the Norse dragon lying on the barrow in Beowulf to the field snake that guards a farmstead's luck, buried wealth comes with a serpent on top of it. That is not one story. It is a motif that turns up wherever people dig, and it is old enough that nobody can say where it starts. A gold hoard has a snake on it the way a bank has a lock. So look again at what this entry is actually offering. He tells you where the treasure is. He tells you where the serpents are. And he brings them to you, the text says, without any force being used on them at all. Those are not three separate services. They are one service described in 3 clauses. He is not a snake enthusiast. He is the man who handles the guard. That is the whole entry, explained. None of the copyists ever bothered to do it. Which is why, when the list gets cut down, Valak survives the cut. By the next book, he is Volac. That book is the Munich Manual of Demonic Magic, and it is a different kind of object from the others, not a reference catalogue. A working handbook, the private manuscript of somebody who was actually doing this. Experiments, illusions, conjurations, written out to be used rather than consulted. It is the closest thing the record has to a practitioner's own notebook, and it is why historians of medieval magic keep coming back to it. Its spirit list is tiny, 11 demons. Out of 82 entries in the older book, somebody has kept 11, and Volac made it. Same boy, same angel wings, same 2-headed dragon, same buried treasure, and now the text says outright that he delivers serpents into the hands of the man conjuring him. 2 things change in that manuscript, and both of them stick. The legions go up. Doulus had 20. Coolor had 13 in one version, and no number at all in another. Volac in the Munich manual has 26, and the rank goes down. In the older book he was a prince. Here he is a president, which sits well below a prince in the order these texts use. Somebody, anonymously, in the 15th century, demoted him. No reason is given, nothing is explained, there is no note in the margin. And every single book that lists him afterwards, for the next 450 years, agrees with the demotion and calls him a president. That is how authority works in this literature, not by argument, by whoever gets copied next. By 1577, the material is in print, and here the story turns on itself. Johann Weyer was a Dutch physician who had studied under Cornelius Agrippa. He spent his career arguing that the women being burned across Europe as witches were ill, deluded, or slandered, and that the courts were killing innocent people. He published a large book making that case. Then, appended to a later edition, he printed a catalogue of 69 spirits, with their ranks and offices and legion counts, so that readers could see how absurd and how mechanical the whole business was. Volac is the 50th in it, same description, 30 legions now. 7 years later, Reginald Scot did the same thing in English. The Discovery of Witchcraft, 1584, written to stop the persecutions, carried Weyer's list into a language ordinary English readers could use. The story that King James later had copies burned is repeated everywhere and is not certain. What is certain is the outcome. Two men compiled these lists in order to reduce belief in demons, and their lists became the founding source text for everybody who has ever tried to summon one. If Weyer could see what the 4 centuries after him did with that appendix, it would ruin his afternoon. Then, in the 17th century, the Lesser Key of Solomon. Inside it, the Ars Goetia and the 72 spirits that everybody has heard of. That book comes with a frame, and the frame is the reason any of these names carry weight at all. The Lesser Key presents its 72 as the spirits King Solomon bound and shut into a brass vessel, which was thrown into a lake and later dug up by people who thought there was treasure in it. Treasure again. The vessel is opened, the spirits get out, and the book is offered as the record of what Solomon knew about them. Solomon did not write it. The entries in it are the ones this episode has just walked through. 15th century European spirit lists, in French and German and Latin, with feudal ranks and Roman legions and a small boy on a dragon. The Solomonic frame is a wrapper, put on late, and the honest version of that history is a better story than the legend. It is also the reason nobody can read the 62nd entry as ancient. It is medieval European clerical bookkeeping in a costume. Valak is the 62nd of them. Here is the entry as the printed English gives it. The 62nd spirit is Valak. He is a president mighty and great, and appeareth like a child with angels' wings, riding on a 2-headed dragon. His office is to give true answers of hidden treasures, and to tell where serpents may be seen, which he will bring unto the exorcist, without any force or strength being by him employed. He governeth 38 legions of spirits, 4.5 centuries, 3 languages, at least 5 books, a child, wings, a 2-headed dragon, treasure, snakes. Nobody added an adjective. What they did add was spellings: Coolor, Doulus, Volac, Valak, Valak with a K, Valu, Ualac, Valax. A name that has been through that many hands in that many languages does not have a correct form anymore. It has a family of forms. The film picked one of them off a list that had already been recopied a dozen times before anybody printed it. And the last shuffle is the one that matters for the corridor. In 1904, Samuel Liddell Mathers and a young Aleister Crowley printed the Ars Goetia in English, with the seals drawn out and the entries laid in order. That printing is the one that never went out of circulation. It is the one the 20th century reprinted, and it is the one that was typed into the internet in the 1990s, entry by entry, and has been sitting there free ever since. Which is almost certainly how a screenwriter in California met the 62nd spirit. Not in a manuscript, on a page anybody can reach in about 4 seconds. Now the 13 and the 38. The count starts at 13 or 20, climbs to 26, moves to 30, and lands on 38. It only ever goes up. No writer in the chain says why, or notes that he has changed it, or shows any sign of knowing that anybody wrote a different figure. The word itself is worth a second. Legion is Roman. It is a unit of the imperial army, somewhere around 5,000 men, with officers and standards and a number of its own. Whoever first used it for spirits was not reaching for a vague word meaning many. He was borrowing an organizational chart. And these texts will tell you the size. Weyer's own book puts 6,666 spirits in a legion. Do that multiplication, and the 62nd spirit commands 253,308 of them. 250,000 subordinates, for a creature whose entire recorded function is to find buried money and hand you a snake. That mismatch is the most human thing in the whole record. The description was fixed, so there was nothing left to embellish. The number was the only field a copyist could improve, and it required inventing nothing. So the number is the field that grew. The rank deserves a minute too, because the film gets it wrong in a specific and interesting way. These books run a court. Kings at the top, then princes, dukes, marquises, earls, presidents, knights. It is the feudal order of the day, lifted whole and pointed downwards, which tells you the people writing this imagined hell as an administration rather than as a pit. The Goetia even carries a table of metals, one to each rank, for the seal a man is meant to wear. Kings get gold, marquises get silver, a president gets fixed mercury, which the book names cheerfully and never explains how to obtain, nor could it. Fixing mercury, getting the liquid metal to hold a solid form, was one of the standing problems of alchemy, and it was never solved. So the instructions for gripping this particular spirit call for a seal cut from a substance nobody in Europe could make. Marquis is a real rank in that court. It is just not his, and the film promoted him by 2 steps. There is something else about that rank. Presidents in the Ars Goetia are, overwhelmingly, teachers. They give the sciences. They explain the virtues of herbs and stones. They answer questions about the past and about creation, and several of them are described as making a man wonderfully knowing. Valac teaches nothing. Across every entry in the chain, not one writer ever gave him a subject. He is a president who does not lecture. He locates. Whatever he originally was, he arrived in this system already fully formed and slightly out of place in it, and no compiler ever tried to tidy that up. So where does he come from before the 15th century? There is one theory in circulation, and it deserves to be taken seriously before it is taken apart. The candidate is Veles, a Slavic god of cattle, wealth, and the underworld. The case runs on 3 things. The name, since Veles appears in some traditions as Volos, which is close to Volac. The animals, since Veles is bound up with snakes. And the shape, since Veles could appear as a dragon. That is a real cluster, and this channel is not going to pretend otherwise. It is also thin. A pagan god being flattened into a demon is a common process, and it is usually a loud one. It leaves a trail, a bishop complaining, a saint's life describing the idol being pulled down, a festival quietly renamed. Veles has that trail, and it is comparatively well documented, and none of it ends with a winged child on a 2-headed dragon in a German spirit catalogue. Set against that, his oldest names in the record are Coolor and Doulus, which sound nothing like Volos at all. Probably not Veles, not impossible. Nobody has found anything better, and the honest position is that the earliest known mention of this spirit is also the earliest evidence that anybody had ever thought of him. That is unsatisfying, and it is where the evidence stops. There is one more column in this record, and it is the one that explains the most famous line in the film. In the 17th century, an English mathematician named Thomas Rudd made his own version of the Goetia, and he did something nobody else had bothered with. He paired every one of the 72 spirits with an opposing angel, 1 to 1, drawn from the 72 names of God, and printed them facing each other on the page. The idea behind it is not his invention. 72 is a number that keeps turning up in this literature. Its most famous home is a trick played on the book of Exodus, at chapter 14, where 3 consecutive verses each happen to run to exactly 72 letters. Read down together, they give 72 names of God, with an angel attached to every one. Rudd's move was to line those angels up against the 72 spirits and say that the way to control one is to invoke the other first. One column is the disease, and the other is the antidote, printed on facing pages. Valak's angel is Earhel. His portfolio, in that tradition, is wisdom, philosophy, solitude, modesty, and the love of quiet. And his verse comes from Psalm 119, verse 159. Consider how I love thy precepts. Quicken me, O Lord. So the record, read across the page, offers a man a choice. In one column, contemplation and silence. In the other, a child on a dragon who will find your money and bring you serpents. Whoever laid that page out was not trying to be funny. It is funny anyway. And the mechanism on that page is the one the film compressed into a single sentence. In Rudd's arrangement, you do not confront the spirit at all. You call the angel first, by its name and its verse, and then you use that authority to hold the demon. Name, then authority, then dominion, in that order. So when the film has her claim that the name hands her dominion, it is running centuries of clerical procedure in a single line. And that page is also where the seal comes in, which is the fifth field and the one nobody ever mentions. Every single one of the 72 has a drawn mark of its own, a tangle of lines and loops that means nothing to look at and is not decoration. In the logic of these books, the seal is the handle. The name identifies the spirit. The seal grips it. The metal it is cut into has to match the rank, which is where the fixed mercury comes back. The whole apparatus is an identification system. It has more in common with a seal on a legal document than with anything in a horror film, which is exactly what you would expect from books written by clerks and clergymen. Which brings it back to the corridor and the nun. Nothing in this entire record is female. Nothing wears a habit. Nothing defiles anything, and nothing is called profane. Snakes is the only one of the 4 claims in that line the books will support, and they support it completely. 2 of the 3 things his office lists are snakes. There is also a clause the film's left on the table, and it is the strangest line in the entry. Without him, the old book says, nobody can do it. Not that he is good at giving a man household spirits, but that he is the only one who can. In a catalogue of 82 competing suppliers, one of them is described as irreplaceable, and it is this one, and nobody has ever explained why. Every copyist in the chain moved that clause forward untouched, and not one of them stopped to ask. But there is one thing the film gets exactly right, and it is not a small thing. In that scene, the power is in the name. She says so, out loud, and then she says the name. That is not a screenwriter's invention. That is the entire theory of every book we have just walked through. The seal, the rank, the name. Those are the mechanism. A man is not fighting a spirit in these texts. He is producing its correct identification, the way you would produce a warrant. The films borrowed a paragraph and got the details wrong. They borrowed the underlying idea and got it right. Which leaves the question of why they needed a nun at all. The answer is that the record gives you a paragraph, and a film needs a face. Nothing in those grimoires can be photographed. A small boy with wings on a 2-headed dragon is not frightening on a screen. It is a coat of arms. A nun in a dark corridor is an image that works on a poster, in a trailer, and on a phone. Once it works there, it becomes the truth as far as most people will ever need it. 4.5 centuries of copyists left him exactly as they found him and only ever raised his head count. One film, in 2016, gave him a face for the first time. The face won. So, the line one more time. You are Valac, the defiler, the profane, the marquis of snakes. Wrong rank, wrong first title, wrong second title. And snakes, which the books have been saying since before Europe had a printing press. 1 word out of 4, and it is the one nobody would have guessed. And the entry is still sitting there, 62nd on the list, in a book that has been in print and free for well over a century. A small boy with wings on a 2-headed dragon, who will show a man where the money is and deal with whatever is coiled on top of it. Not one of the copyists in that chain could agree on his name, or his legions, or his rank. Every one of them agreed on the boy. The face is on the poster, the boy is still in the book. One of those 2 will still be here in 500 years, and the record has already been keeping the boy for that long without any help from a poster. Let me know in the comments which of the 72 you want opened next, and whether the films should have kept the boy on the dragon. And if you want the entire catalogue rather than one entry from it, all 72 spirits of the lesser key, every rank and every office and every one of those legion counts read out in order, that one is already here. Make sure to subscribe to the Heretic Codex